Could a single joke rewrite your future? Mine arrived as forms, dates, and a week split between two homes. My name is Ione. I enter pay hours at a small office and like tidy rows. I like tidy stories too. I called my behavior honesty. I called my needs self-care. When I posted a line that asked why any woman should settle for one partner, I said it was humor. When I used an old mirror photo from a studio and wrote a fresh caption, I said everyone knew it was a throwback. When my sister ran polls that made Spark win over comfort, I said the votes were science. If Dan looked tired, I told myself he feared growth. At home, I shaped the air. If he asked for a private talk, I said private talks hide rot. If he mentioned our child, I said children are strong. If he stayed quiet, I said silence meant consent. I believed a soft tone could cover sharp ideas. I believed pressure would turn him into the man I wanted. The papers said something else. They listed screenshots, timestamps, geotags, ride-share notes, a doorbell export, and the school's email trail. They turned my captions into routes on a map. They tied my jokes to our child's routine. They paused our money. I stood in the doorway with the laundry cooling in my arms and understood that my story had been written down without me. The cookout felt easy at first. The grill cooled. The children chased bubbles. And I carried plates to the kitchen like a practiced host. I told myself I would raise the standard of our marriage in one night. I started with a light story about joining a spin class. I said I met Cade there and felt 17 again for a second. I said that feeling proved I still had options. Dan asked if we could keep the night calm. I answered that growth needed air and that small talk rots brave love. I saw Marta try to change the topic to garden soil. I smiled and then turned the talk back to my plan. I set rules for my game. I said comparison was medicine and not cruelty. I said couples improve when they hear hard feedback. I added that safety without spark becomes a slow winter. Edwin suggested a board game. I thanked him as if he had helped, and then explained that adults should play honesty rounds instead. I said each person would share what keeps a partner awake and what puts a partner to sleep. I used a soft voice so it sounded like care. I presented my case. I told the table that Dan was steady, kind, and organized. I said he was a good father and a careful calendar. Then I said, careful can feel dull when a woman still has light left. I floated a line that one partner might not be enough if needs stay unmet. The room cooled. I called it a joke and said everyone knew my humor. Rhea laughed and said my standard was high. Evelyn told me strong women guard their energy. I stood a little taller. Dan's face closed in the way doors close softly. He asked again if we could stop. I answered that he feared growth and that this fear was the real problem. I pulled out my phone and opened a photo from months ago at the studio mirror. I cropped it to show light on my shoulder and a bright band on my wrist. I wrote a caption in present tense and added a tiny tag that said throwback. I hid the tag under a sticker because tags look messy. I told myself the post would teach him to try harder. A moment later, a little reaction heart appeared from Cade. Rhea reposted and wrote that I still had choices. More hearts rolled in. I announced to the room that the internet had voted. Dan stepped onto the porch with the recycling bin. The smart doorbell blinked when he opened the door. I saw the blue light and decided it meant nothing. I used his absence to steer the room again. I told our guests that Dan enjoyed this banter and that he liked a strong wife. Marta's smile did not reach her eyes. Edwin cleared his throat and offered coffee. Poppy tugged my sleeve and asked about dessert. I stroked her hair and said soon in my warmest tone. I believed a warm tone made any line safe. I opened Rhea's group chat and suggested a poll. Energy or stability? She built it in seconds. Friends tapped with fast fingers. Energy climbed like a rocket. I watched the numbers and felt that soft rush I get when a plan lands. I told myself numbers cannot be cruel because numbers are clean. I said out loud that the poll would help me set a fair bar for the next month. Dan came back inside with his phone in his hand. He asked about the timing on my post. I said it was playful and that lovers handle play. He asked if the mirror was from today. I said it was a mood, and moods are timeless. He looked at me, then at the doorbell lens, as if the house had ears. He thanked Edwin for the coffee and kept quiet. He slid his phone into his pocket the way people store a file. Ria showed me the poll results like a trophy. Evelyn squeezed my elbow and told me not to lower my crown. Jonas teased that men need pressure. Marta began to stack cups with careful hands and did not speak. I cut cake and considered a second caption. I thought about writing that one note is not a song. In the doorway, I saw the blue light blink again and heard a faint click, like a save. Dan moved calmly, the way he moves when he is on duty, and asked if anyone needed water. I nodded that I was fine. I felt proud of my brave night. I did not know he was already building a record. I did not know each laugh, each poll, and each crop sat inside his phone with the time stamped under it. I thought I had won the room. He let the doorbell blink, and he let me talk. Morning made everything look clean. I opened the payroll sheet and liked the tidy boxes. The lead asked about my lunch hour. I said I had a vendor training off-site. I kept my tone steady, like routine. She asked for the company name for the binder. I said the rep would email later. I believed a future email could solve a present hole. Dan sent a message about Poppy's pickup after school. I said I had it covered. I forwarded the task to Ria and did not tell him. I called it teamwork. I told myself he worried too much and needed to learn to let go. I added a small heart at the end of my note to him, so it would look gentle. At noon, I walked to RevCycle. The mirror wall greeted me like an old friend. The host waved and said the corner seat was open. I liked that he remembered. Cade came from the studio with a towel on his shoulder. He asked if I was happy and if home felt light. I did not give facts. I gave a smile and a soft breath. He placed 2 small bowls from the juice bar and said he needed honest feedback. I said I had only an hour and that I was careful. I liked that word on my own tongue. I took a photo from above that made colors shine. I cropped faces and left only bright fruit and a wristband. Cade took a wider photo for the studio account. I saw my shape near the edge. The geotag turned on. I left it. Pins felt neutral. I wrote a caption about self-care over stale care. I added a poll that asked followers to pick comfort or spark. Spark jumped fast. Ria reposted with glitter text. She added a sound effect that made it feel like a win. I watched the votes and told myself the crowd knew me better than my husband did. A coworker messaged to ask for the vendor's name again. I said the rep would send handouts later. I planned to deal with it when later arrived. Dan sent another note. He said Poppy asked why I had missed a small game the night before. I said work had run long and we would make it up on the weekend. I did not mention the studio or the poll. I told myself a mother can juggle. Cade mentioned a weekend pop-up by the marina. He said the sunset there could fix a bad week. I said the girls might go. I liked the image of a ribbon of light across water. It felt like proof that my life had opened doors. On the sidewalk, he asked if I was free later. I sent him a small wave icon instead of words. It felt strong to answer without answering. Back at the office, the lead reminded me about the binder. She asked for vendor contact and handouts. I smiled and said they were coming. My stomach tightened in a quick knot. I typed a fake placeholder on the calendar so the line would look official. I told myself details could be built later, and that outcomes are what matter. By late afternoon, I checked the poll again. Spark was far ahead. I felt taller in my chair. Evelyn sent a short line that told me to hold the house. I saved it like a charm. Ria sent a picture of Poppy at piano and told me she had handled the ride. I posted the photo with a caption about proud mom life. I believed the internet would see a devoted parent and forget the timing. When I clocked out, the sun made the parking lot glow. Dan's name filled my screen. I let the call fade because I wanted my story arranged before I spoke. Then I opened Cade's message thread and sent a second wave. It looked small on the screen, but it felt like a step toward the life I kept promising myself. My mother set the table with heavy plates and a bright runner, so the room looked safe. I decided safety was the problem. I told everyone I had read about a tool where families speak growth goals out loud so partners cannot dodge them later. I said public goals work better than private talks. Dan asked if we could wait until after cake. I said delay always wins when people fear truth. Marta said a birthday might not be the place. I said growth has no calendar. I chose travel because travel sounds clean. I asked each person to share a trip that made them feel alive. Before anyone spoke, I took the first turn. I built a sea weekend from memory and never named Cade. I described lanterns on a breezeway and salt air in the curtains. I said the hours felt like a film. I let my voice soften so the words would pass as care. Ria lifted her phone to record small clips. My mother praised my courage. My father smiled at Dan as if to say, steady men never understand light. Dan said he plans our trips around school nights and bedtimes. He said children need rhythm. I answered, that planning is not energy. I said a bus schedule never changed a heart. The table fell quiet. Forks hovered above plates. Poppy asked in a small voice when candles would start. I touched her shoulder and said soon. I believed a gentle hand could erase a hard line. Marta poured water with a shaking hand and asked to keep the day simple. I said simplicity hides rot. To make the tool look fair, I asked others to name growth areas. Then I steered it back to travel. I added a line that I had almost booked the same seaside place again by accident. I left the timing unclear on purpose. Ria covered a laugh behind her glass. My mother nodded like a judge who had already chosen a side. I watched Dan stand. He said he needed a breath. He stepped into the hallway. I told myself the pressure was working. In the kitchen, I stacked dessert plates a little harder than needed and leaned toward Ria. I said Cade was better in every important way. I said it as if I were reporting the weather. The swing door had a narrow glass pane. In the pane, Dan's face appeared, still and careful. He had heard enough. He did not ask me to repeat a word. He looked like someone who had just learned the rule of a game he never agreed to play. He walked to the front closet and lifted Poppy's small overnight bag. He asked his mother if she could keep Poppy after cake so the evening would be quiet. Marta agreed without lifting her eyes. He told me we would discuss things another time, when the children were not listening. I said he was being dramatic and that adults should handle feedback. I kept my tone warm so I could call it kindness later. He checked his phone. I heard a faint alert. Later, I learned it was the doorbell app, finishing an export of my cookout jokes. We returned to the table. The cake came out with bright candles. Everyone sang in a careful key. Poppy clapped on the beat but kept watching the hall. Owen tapped a fork on wood and laughed without knowing why. Dan stood by the coats with keys in his hand and waited for the last clap. When it ended, he guided Poppy to the door. He said he would drive her to his parents for a calm evening and an early night. I told the room he wanted a grand exit to make me look harsh. No one argued. My father cut slices as if steady hands could hold the air in place. The car pulled away before the first plate reached a guest. My phone vibrated with new notifications I did not open. The hallway felt wider and colder. I told myself Dan would return after he cooled off. I told myself he would thank me for the push. The words did not feel strong. In my head, I heard a small click, like a save button, and understood he was gathering the story I thought I owned. I decided to move first and shape the story. I opened the group chat and wrote that I needed data. I built a new poll with 2 unnamed partners. Anyone could guess which row was Dan and which row was Cade. I hinted in replies and told friends this was research for a healthy marriage. The row that matched Cade climbed fast. Hearts stacked under my posts. My sister flooded the chat with cheers. I felt taller with every vote and told myself numbers prove truth. Dan asked why Cade kept appearing near my posts. I said he was inventing problems to avoid growth. He suggested counseling again. I said I had already done that work in my head and learned I was underloved. He asked for one screen-free talk. I said I only wanted proof he would fight for me. I liked how those words felt in my mouth. I repeated them to my sister, so I would have witnesses later. The girls planned a night out. I said I needed sparkle to clear my head. I wore a bright dress and a clean face. At the bar, I filmed a short story from a corner booth. The caption said, "Options keep a woman honest." Behind the glass, a narrow slice of window showed a moving shape that looked like Cade's shoulders as he passed on the sidewalk. I left it in the frame. I told myself it was only a silhouette. I paid cash for drinks, so the joint account would stay quiet. On the drive home, I used the joint card for gas because I forgot to carry more cash. The receipt geotagged the station near the studio. I called pins neutral and turned the screen face down. A mutual friend sent Dan a screenshot of my caption about backup plans. Dan asked if I was taking our marriage seriously. I sent a line about self-care and wrote that the internet rewards honesty. He asked to speak when I got home. I told him I might stay at my sister's place so he could reflect. I wrote to Cade that I was free later. I watched the 3 threads on my screen and chose the one that made my chest feel light. In our living room, I doubled down. I posted another poll with 2 rows labeled romance level. I hinted again which row was which. I celebrated when the row that matched Dan lost. Comments called me brave. I believed the praise and ignored the warnings. I uploaded a caption that implied I did not belong to one man. I deleted it when a cousin sent a frown, then posted a cleaner version with a softer tone. I told myself tone is the part that matters. Dan sat at the table with a legal pad and a careful face. He asked for one real talk without phones. I said effort comes first and that speeches do not count. He looked at the door as if a clock lived there. I felt strong in that quiet. I told myself I had won the night. I messaged my sister that I might sleep at her place. I messaged Cade that my evening was open. Both messages carried the same hunger disguised as independence. Near midnight, the bar posted a crowd photo. I appeared as a blur in the background of one frame, just enough to recognize my dress. The studio page posted a story that showed a street view with a timestamp. The angle matched the window at the bar. I told myself nobody studies angles. I told myself only lawyers care about maps. My phone buzzed again with small things. A rideshare receipt settled for a short hop near the studio. A parent from Poppy's class liked my proud mom post from earlier and added a smile. The mix made me feel safe. I told myself the world had my back. I told myself good women can multitask. A little glow, a little family, a little growth. I heard Dan move a chair back and stack papers. He asked if we could set one house rule: no more online polls about the marriage. I said a woman needs her crowd when a man refuses to rise. He wrote something on the pad. I told myself he was making a list of ways to improve. He was writing exhibit numbers. I poured water and thought about a final post. I drafted a line about never shrinking to fit one person's comfort. I set it to publish in the morning for better reach. I liked the way the sentence made my shoulders lift. I put my phone face down and told myself the night was mine. A knock cut through the room like a bell. It was not gentle. I opened the door and met a process server with a neutral face. He asked for my full name and checked it against his screen. I confirmed and signed on a small device. I laughed into the group chat that Dan must be bluffing with paperwork. I broke the seal on the packet. The laugh stopped without a sound. The package looked like schoolwork at first. Tabs in colors, neat clips, a cover letter with a calm tone. It said the aim was peace for our daughter. I told myself the tone was fake. I drove to the law office anyway to prove I was not afraid. The lobby had glass walls and quiet printers. A receptionist explained that the attorney could not speak with me and that I should find my own counsel. Through the glass, I saw Sonia Patel slide pages into a binder while Dan sat with his hand still. He did not look at me. I stared until my eyes hurt, then left with my chin high. At home, I spread the pages across our table. The index read like a map. The first stack held screenshots. There was my mirror post with a present tense caption and a hidden throwback tag. There was my line about not belonging to one man. There were polls where Spark beat comfort and comments that called me brave. Each image had a timestamp under it. Another stack held a rideshare receipt near the studio, and a gas charge with a pin by RevCycle. A page listed my office calendar entries that did not match the vendor story. My face warmed. I told myself timing errors happen to everyone. The next section showed doorbell exports. There were small clips from the cookout, from late returns, from quiet porch steps. A memo paired those with school emails about morning drop-offs and a steady homework routine. A short note from Poppy's teacher listed dates with Dan's initials. The counselor memo was careful and neutral. It said public conflict and unstable schedules hurt children. It suggested clear rules and low drama. The letter read like a traffic sign that never raises its voice. Then came the bank notice. Automatic financial restraints were already in place. Large transfers were barred without consent. Ordinary bills must continue. Future paychecks could route to separate accounts under the order. I told myself this was punishment. I texted my sister that lawyers dislike funny wives. She sent hearts and outfits. She said juries like color. I said I could carry a room if I kept my tone soft. She agreed because agreement is easy on a screen. The proposed parenting plan sat on heavier paper. It offered week-on and week-off time. It set exchanges in the police lobby. It included a non-disparagement rule that banned shaming online and near devices the child could reach. It barred new partners from staying overnight during Poppy's week. I called it controlling. I told my parents I managed mornings anyway. I walked to the wall calendar and saw rows of Dan's initials. I said initials mean nothing without heart. The silence in the room felt like a new kind of answer. Another packet listed exhibits by number. The hallway reflection from brunch sat there. The rideshare hop near the studio had a timestamp. The bar's crowd photo showed my dress as a blur at the edge. The studio story had a street angle that matched the bar window. The memo called it corroboration. I told myself only lawyers care about angles. Then I remembered the judge would be a lawyer too. Dan called my phone and asked me to join a speaker call. When I answered, both sets of parents were there. He stated the filings, the exhibits, and the schedule. He said any questions should go through counsel. My mother urged me to stay composed and to hold the house. Marta asked for calm for Poppy. I said I was still in charge of the story. No one replied to that line. The call ended with a small click that felt like a door closing down the hall. I turned to the back pages. A hearing sat 10 days away, early in the morning, with a note about fee shifting if anyone wasted time. The witness list ran longer than I expected. It named brunch guests, a co-worker from payroll, and the group chat export. My sister's name appeared as custodian of records. I read it twice. The letters looked like shapes. My phone buzzed again. A notification flashed from the court portal about a pending lock change motion tied to key control and school continuity. The screen held the word expedited. I stood very still and tried to think of a caption that could move a judge. The printer in my head stopped making sound. The courtroom felt like a clock I could not slow. My attorney told me to answer simply. Across the aisle, Sonia Patel arranged binders while Dan watched the bench, not me. The judge said the case was about proof and a child's routine. My stomach tightened because proof had dates, pins, and small blue lights. My attorney spoke about busy weeks and jokes taken the wrong way. I said my captions were humor and my polls were private. The exhibit said they were public. The judge looked through the mirror post with a hidden tag, the rideshare hop near the studio, the gas receipt pin, the doorbell exports, and the school emails that lined up with morning drop-offs. The judge asked about the poll that compared two unnamed partners. I admitted it was mine. Orders came in clean lines. There would be shared legal custody and a strict 50-50 schedule, with the first week to Dan to match school mornings. Exchanges would take place in the police lobby. A non-disparagement rule would bar either of us from shaming the other online or near devices our child could reach. Temporary exclusive use of the bungalow would go to Dan during the school months because of commute and caregiving records. Automatic financial restraints would continue. Ordinary bills must be paid. Large discretionary purchases were barred. New partners would not stay overnight during Poppy's time and could not appear at exchanges. A portion of Dan's attorney fees on the motion would be paid by me due to needless public escalation. The civil emotional distress claim would proceed on its own track. We left the building in careful steps. At the house, a patrol car idled by the curb. Dan read the key clause while the officer stood near the porch light. He asked for keys and the garage fob. I asked for more time. He said the schedule would be followed. Our parents listened on a call. My mother urged me to stay composed. Marta asked for calm for Poppy. I placed the keys in Dan's hand because paper told me to. He took our daughter's small backpack, nodded to the officer, and stepped inside. The latch closed with a soft click. Don't forget to hit like, subscribe, and turn on the bell so you don't miss the next story. Write in the comments from which city are you watching.